You don't want to cross a human. It was a routine supply run for the Corinth cargo hauler Brisk Blaze as it approached the refueling station orbiting the remote mining colony of Torbeck IV. The Brisk Blaze was a modest Corellian light freighter, modified with a few extra cargo holds, but nothing close to the heavily armed and armored troop transports and military vessels that often pass through this sector. As the Brisk Blaze began docking procedures, the station's manager, a grizzled old Cygnian named Jokad, looked over the arriving ship's manifest, refueling a standard cargo drop, nothing too out of the ordinary. But then Jokad's brow furrowed as he noticed one particular entry, a lone passenger, disembarking at Torbeck IV. Interesting, Jokad mused to himself as he looked over the details. A human. That was unusual for this remote backwater colony. Humans were a rarity out here in the galactic rim territories. Most preferred the more populated and developed core worlds. But this was no ordinary human. The passenger manifest listed the name Sergeant Avery Brooks, UNEC. Jokad's scaly reptilian features twisted into a frown. The UNEC, the United North American Expeditionary Corps, a storied and formidable force of human warriors, renowned throughout known space. What was one of them doing all the way out here? As the Brisk Blaze's boarding ramp lowered, Jokad watched intently, his clawed fingers tapping on the console as a lone figure emerged. A tall, solidly built human male with a stern, weathered face. He wore a rugged set of combat fatigues and carried a compact assault rifle slung over his shoulder. Sergeant Avery Brooks surveyed the spaceport with a keen, appraising gaze, his eyes scanning the activity around him. Jokad let out a heavy sigh. This was not going to be a routine supply run. He could already tell. Humans, especially UNEC soldiers, were not to be trifled with. He quickly made his way down to the docking bay to greet the sergeant. "Greetings, Sergeant Brooks," Jokad called out. "I'm Jokad, the station manager. Welcome to Torbeck IV. What brings a UNEC soldier all the way out to our little mining colony?" Brooks turned to face Jokad, his expression unreadable. "I'm here on a special assignment," he replied coolly. "I need to speak with the colony administrator as soon as possible." Jokad felt a chill run down his spine at the sergeant's tone. Yes, of course. Right this way." As Jokad led Brooks through the spaceport towards the administrative offices, he couldn't help but feel a growing sense of unease. UNEC soldiers were renowned for their ferocity in battle, their unwavering discipline, and their staunch dedication to duty. Whatever had brought one of them all the way out here, it was likely a serious matter. When they arrived at the administrator's office, Jokad announced Brooks's arrival. The administrator, a weary-looking Jerian named Grail, looked up in surprise. "A UNEC sergeant? This is unexpected. Please, come in." Grail gestured for Brooks to enter, his expression betraying a hint of trepidation. Brooks strode into the office, his gaze sweeping over the room and its occupants. "Administrator Grail, I'm Sergeant Avery Brooks. I have some disturbing news to discuss with you." Grail swallowed hard. "Of course, Sergeant. Please, have a seat." Brooks took a seat across from Grail, his expression grave. 3 days ago, the UNEC outpost on Torbeck. I went silent. We lost contact with them, and all attempts to re-establish communication have failed. Grail's eyes widened in alarm. "Torbeck, but that's only a few parsecs from here. What happened?" "That's what I'm here to find out," Brooks replied. "I've been dispatched to investigate the situation and assess any potential threats to the Torbeck system." Jokad, who'd been standing silently by the door, spoke up. "Threats? You mean something may have happened to the outpost?" Brooks turned his gaze to the Cygnian. "That's exactly what I'm concerned about. The UNEC does not take the loss of one of its outposts lightly. I'm here to determine what happened and respond accordingly. Grail's brow furrowed in worry. Respond accordingly? You mean, if necessary, Brooks said, his tone unwavering. The safety and security of UNEC personnel is my top priority. I won't leave any stone unturned in my investigation. Jocade shifted uncomfortably, his scaled skin prickling. I see. Well, I'll do whatever I can to assist you, Sergeant. The colony is at your disposal. Brooks nodded. Excellent. I'll need full access to your communications and security records, as well as any other relevant data. I also request that you immediately suspend all non-essential off-world traffic until further notice. Grail's eyes widened. Suspend off world traffic, but that will cripple our mining operations. We rely on those shipments to... Brooks raised a hand, silencing the administrator. I understand the inconvenience, but the security of this system takes priority. Lives may be at stake. I'm sure you can appreciate the gravity of the situation. Grail sighed heavily, defeated. Yes, of course. I'll make the necessary arrangements. Good. Brooks stood up from his chair. I'll need to get started right away. Time is of the essence. As Brooks made his way out of the office, Jocade hurried to catch up with him. Sergeant Brooks, if I may, what do you think happened on Torbeck? I.e. Brooks paused, his gaze hardening. I don't know, Jocade, but whatever it is, I can assure you, you don't want to cross a human. With that, Brooks continued on his way, leaving a deeply unsettled Jocade in his wake. Over the next few hours, Brooks immersed himself in the colony's communication and security records, meticulously combing through every last detail. The UNEC outpost on Torbeck II had gone dark without warning, with the last transmission indicating nothing out of the ordinary. No distress signals, no signs of attack or malfunction, just silence. As Brooks analyzed the data, a growing sense of dread began to take hold. Something was very wrong. The outpost should have been able to defend itself against any known threats in the region. The fact that it had been silenced so completely was deeply troubling. Brooks turned his attention to the colony's sensor logs, searching for any anomalies in the days leading up to the outpost's disappearance. It was then that he noticed a curious spike in energy readings near the edge of the system, just prior to the last transmission from Torbeck II. That's interesting, Brooks muttered to himself, his brow furrowing in concentration. He pulled up a star chart, tracing the sensor readings back to their source. His eyes widened as he pinpointed the location. A previously uncharted star system, barely a parsec from the Torbeck colony. Brooks leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. An uncharted system, right on the colony's doorstep, and something had happened there just before the UNEC's outpost went silent. His gut instinct told him that the two events were connected. He quickly summoned Jocade and Grail to the command center. What have you found, Sergeant? Grail asked, his voice tinged with worry. I think I may have a lead on what happened to the Torbeck II outpost, Brooks replied. There was a spike in energy readings near an uncharted system just prior to the outpost going dark. I believe we need to investigate that system immediately. Jocade's scaled features twisted in concern. Uncharted. That's highly unusual for this region. What could be out there? Brooks shook his head. I don't know, but I intend to find out. I'm taking a small recon team to scout the system. In the meantime, I want you to maintain the lockdown on all off. World traffic, the colony's safety is my top priority. Grail nodded reluctantly. Very well, Sergeant. We'll do as you ask. Just be careful out there. Brooks offered a grim nod. Don't worry, Administrator. I've faced worse than whatever's out there. This is my mission, and I won't fail. Without another word, Brooks turned and strode off, his mind already racing with possibilities and contingencies. He would get to the bottom of this, no matter what it took. The UNEC shuttle Nighthawk sliced through the void of space, its compact but powerful engines propelling it swiftly towards the uncharted system. Brooks sat quietly in the co-pilot seat, his gaze fixed out the viewport as the distant stars streamed by. Beside him, the pilot, a seasoned UNEC corporal named Jax, spoke up. "ETA to the system in 5 minutes, Sergeant." "You sure about this?" Brooks nodded, his expression resolute. "I am." "Something happened out there, Jax, and I intend to find out what. The safety of the Torbeck colony is at stake." Jax shrugged. "Your call, Sarge. Just be prepared for anything. We're flying blind into unknown territory here." "I'm always prepared, Corporal," Brooks replied, his tone unwavering. As the Nighthawk approached the system, Brooks felt a growing sense of unease. The sensor readings had been sporadic and unreliable, and the closer they got, the more the hairs on the back of his neck stood on end. Something was off about this place. "Bringing us in slowly," Jax announced, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Sensors are picking up something, but I can't make heads or tails of it." Brooks leaned forward, his eyes narrowing as he scanned the view screen. What he saw caused his heart to drop. The system was strange. The planets, if they could be called that, were not the typical spherical bodies one would expect. Instead, they were vast, amorphous structures, shifting and undulating in ways that defied the laws of physics. And amid these bizarre celestial formations, Brooks could make out the twisted, broken remnants of the UNEC outpost on Torbeck II. His jaw tightened, a deep sense of rage and determination welling up within him. "What the hell is this?" Jax breathed, his voice tinged with a mixture of awe and horror. Brooks clenched his fists. "I don't know, Corporal, but I intend to find out. Take us in." "Slowly. I want a closer look at those things." As the Nighthawk cautiously approached the eerie alien structures, Brooks's mind raced. Whatever had happened here, it was unlike anything he had ever encountered before. And if it had managed to destroy a UNEX outpost, it posed a grave threat to the Torbeck colony. "Brace for anything, Jax," Brooks said, his voice low and even. The Nighthawk dove deeper into the alien system, its pilots and sole passenger bracing themselves for the horrors that awaited them. Aboard the brisk blaze, Jokad and Grail waited anxiously for any word from the UNEC recon team. The atmosphere in the command center was tense, the two men unsettled by the gravity of the situation. "Do you really think Sergeant Brooks can handle whatever's out there?" Grail asked, his voice tinged with worry. Jokade let out a heavy sigh. "If anyone can, it's a UNEC soldier. But I've never seen anything like what the sergeant described. Those sensor readings, the bizarre energy signatures. It's unlike anything I've ever encountered." Grail shook his head. "And you're certain that's what happened to the Torbeck II outpost?" "It's the only plausible explanation," Jokade replied, his clawed fingers drumming nervously on the console. "Whatever is in that system, it managed to completely silence a UNEX installation. That's deeply unsettling." The two men fell silent, the weight of the situation bearing down on them. They could only hope that Brooks and his team would return safely, with answers that could help them prepare for whatever threat loomed on the horizon. Time crawled by, the tense silence punctuated only by the occasional beep or hum of the station's systems. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a transmission crackled to life on the comm channel. "Brisk blaze, this is Nighthawk." Jokade and Grail both leaned forward, their hearts racing. Jokad quickly answered the transmission. "This is the Brisk Blaze. Sergeant Brooks, we read you. What's your status?" There was a brief pause before Brooks' voice responded, tinged with a hint of something. Urgency. Dread? Brisk Blaze, the situation is worse than we anticipated. The Torbeck III outpost is destroyed, and we've encountered something unlike anything I've ever seen. We're heading back to the colony, but you need to be prepared. Whatever did this to the outpost, it's out there, and it poses a grave threat to the entire system. Joe Cade and Grail exchanged a worried glance. Understood, Sergeant, Joe Cade replied. We'll alert the colony's defenses and prepare for your return. Just gack here safely. Copy that, Brisk Blaze. Brooks out. As the comm channel went silent, Joe Cade and Grail looked at each other, their faces etched with a mixture of fear and determination. The colony is in danger, Grail said solemnly. We have to be ready. Joe Cade nodded grimly. Then let's get to work. Whatever's out there, we can't let it reach Torbeck IV. The two men sprang into action, rallying the colony's security forces and putting the entire installation on high alert. Whatever was coming, they would be ready. The Nighthawk streaked back towards Torbeck IV, its engines pushed to the limit. Brooks sat in the co-pilot's seat, his mind racing with the horrifying revelations they had uncovered in the alien system. Jax, how soon can we reach the colony? He asked, his voice tight with urgency. At this speed, we'll be there in less than an hour, Sarge, Jax replied, his hands expertly guiding the shuttle. But what the hell did we just see out there? Brooks' jaw tightened. Something unnatural, inhuman. Those planets we saw, they weren't planets at all. They were creatures. Massive alien creatures, unlike anything I've ever encountered. Jax's eyes widened. Brooks nodded grimly. Yes, and they... Jax swallowed hard. So what does that mean for the colony? It means we're in grave danger, Brooks said, his voice laced with a rare note of concern. Those creatures, whatever they are, they're out there, and they're coming. We have to warn the colony and prepare for the worst. Jax's grip tightened on the controls. Then let's get there as fast as we can, Sarge. I'll push this bird to the limit. Brooks nodded, his gaze fixed resolutely on the distant stars. Do it. The Nighthawk surged forward, hurtling towards Torbeck IV and the impending battle that awaited them. Grail and Joe Cade stood at the main view screen in the colony's command center, their eyes fixed on the distant star system. The entire colony was on high alert, its defenses primed and ready.